They're tearing down the Mary Hall house. Wes Cunningham, King Nut, is tearing this house down. It's kind of a sad sort of thing.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this to happen.
I know. It's among the many, I don't know, sort of a symbolic gesture, I guess. It's like they're tearing this old place down and then they're building a McDonald's in town and,
oh yeah.
I don't know.
I filmed Jero's earlier.
Stuff changes. Sometimes I guess you just gotta roll with it, but sometimes it's kind of sad, I don't know. Okay, this is a work of fiction that I wrote a few years ago. It's entitled The Smoking R Gang, and it's sort of reminiscent of this place that is about to be torn down by King Nut, Wes Cunningham. We waited for him on the porch where we had spent many of our days on that long, hot summer. There we would sit around drinking cups of syrupy black coffee. The coffee serving as a means to promote mad conversations in order to adjust to the heat-charged lunacy that is late summer in Alabama. There in the heat of the day with our black coffee and only the awning above to protect us from the sun's rays, we would pray for long, cool showers of rain to drop from the sky, anticipating the drops like a young Baptist boy might anticipate being dunked into a font. And that is just what our street next to our porch became in August during a rain, a tremendous baptismal ground where cool drops of water come tumbling out of the sky like manna from heaven. The hymn in question is Billy Gregory Lee. He had befriended all of us when we were just growing comfortable with the idea of being unstable young college students and just stepping into a way of life that we all feel quite settled in, at least for the time being. That of coffee sipping, porch sitting, creative on good days, drunk on bad days, though drunk on some good days too, mad bunch of fools. Foolish, but probably no less correct than anyone else. Billy had gone off to a mythical place that we in Alabama know as the West, leaving behind all of what he considered to be backwards and conservative and unopen to creative expression and lacking a sense of poetic beauty. He hoped to find a land out there of enchantment and enlightened souls. And that is all right by me, I suppose, though I must say I do feel quite content on the porch, sitting in the Flannery O'Connor rocking chair, so named for the peacocks embroidered on the cushion, rolling a cigarette while P paces around scratching his scruffy chin, and Dee Dee sits on some other chair with a blank expression on her face that invites one to ask, what is wrong? Yet we do not do so, knowing that she will just say, nothing, in a tone synonymous with, why do you care? Or, you really wouldn't understand. And really a whole lot isn't wrong, only somehow she got it in her head that it is romantic to act pitiful and pouty like one of her idols that she reads about in Spin magazine. Sometimes P grows quite frustrated by Dee Dee's attitude and asks me to roll him up a cigarette for medicinal purposes, he explains. I tease him about this and he says, I know. When he gets his cigarette, he takes a seat on the steps, occasionally taking a short, slow drag, staring at the traffic with contemplative eyes, every now and then spitting out pieces of tobacco and shaking his head over just about everything in general. The mid-afternoon sun came beating down on the pavement with no mercy. Cars roared by at ungodly speeds without any concern that maybe a young child might happen to walk in front of their path. Cars everywhere. Great big 18-wheelers spewing massive clouds of exhaust. Little cars, big cars, day-glow cars spraying their territory like with monotonous superwoofer-charged bass tracks like big dick kitty cats looking to get 'em some. This was a time of day that had to be waded through, keeping in mind that in about 15 minutes or so, we would be able to relax to the sounds of something a little more aesthetically pleasing, like Miles Davis blowing on his blue horn, or John Prine singing crackly throat songs about love and love lost. Waiting for the calm to return to the street and waiting for Billy, we swilled down our third cup for the day. I had taken to pacing about while P began playing with a little trinket suspended by a string from the awning, and Dee Dee sat in a chair with that distant look on her face, not saying much of anything. "Where could he be?" asked P. "He was supposed to be here yesterday." "Who knows?" I replied. "I guess he's planning a grand entrance." "What do you mean?" asked Dee Dee. "Oh, hell, I don't know. I just think... Hell, I don't know." "Yeah," said P, who seemed only half conscious of what I had said. "Yeah, I think I know what you mean." About this time, Rusty Ray Moore came waddling onto the front porch from upstairs, with his blue jeans hanging halfway down his butt and his hair in disarray, looking like the Three Stooges' lost beatnik brother, walking and talking with a certain clumsy grace that doesn't bear the mark of any particular place, neither in time nor in location, truly out of time. We all turned to greet him except for Dee Dee, who just sat in the chair looking blank and mysterious. "Hey guys," said Rusty Ray. "Hey," said P and myself. "Oh, hi," said Dee Dee, in her somber tone, to which Rusty Ray had grown so accustomed that he hardly noticed it anymore, like a hole in the wall or the monotonous buzz of a shorted electrical wire. "Guess what?" Rusty Ray announced with a wild look in his eye, as if he were about to tell us that he had seen the Lord Jesus Christ walking naked down Main Street. "What is it?" I inquired. "It's gonna rain." And this probably was the next best thing to hearing that Jesus was naked in the streets, at least for P and myself, whose eyeballs grew the size of cantaloupes at the thought of cool showers. "How wonderful! Beautiful!" Silence from the seat that Dee Dee occupied. "Yeah," said Rusty Ray in a cool tone. "I just heard about it on the radio. I thought you guys might like that. It's kind of like hearing that your most hated teacher got pneumonia on a day of a test you've been dreading all week. Hey, does anyone got a smoke? Oh, wait, never mind. I got one right here behind my ear. Ah, ha, ha. So, did y'all's friend ever show up?" "Sure hasn't." "Oh, well, I'm sure he'll be around. I've been thinking that I might like to go out west sometime. You know, see some sights, drink some beer, that kind of thing. Maybe your friend Billy or Willie or whatever would let me stay with him for a few days. But who knows? Maybe I'll just stay put for a while. I got plenty to do around here. Besides, people might think I'm turning into a hippie or some shit like that." Rusty Ray lit his cigarette and started walking toward his room upstairs. With his characteristic slow stride, his mischievous brow, and directionless hair, he appeared to me to be both man and child. Tall and developed like a full-grown man, yet embodying a countenance of innocence and childhood wisdom despite his 23 or 24 years of experience. As Rusty Ray turned the corner, P said, as if reading my mind, "Man, Rusty Ray is like one of the R Gang or something." "Yeah," I said, "or like one of the Peanuts, but with a hip slapstick twist." I wonder which one he would be. Probably Spanky, because he's kind of like the wise leader who always gets the R Gang into trouble. And you know that Spanky had to have been the first of the gang to start smoking, which would prompt the rest of them to start. Yeah, that's it. Spanky with a cigarette. That's who Rusty Ray really is. Ha ha ha! Yeah, you know, he could be kind of like our leader. We could build a clubhouse and have secret handshakes, and no girls would be allowed in our club, and we would smoke cigarettes in our clubhouse as if we were trying to hide from our parents or our friends' parents, or the neighborhood enemies who would narc on us to our parents, which would get us grounded. Then Rusty Ray would come up with some crazy plan to get revenge on the neighborhood bully enemies that would not quite work and would get us in bigger trouble with our parents. Dee Dee cracked a smile at this and said, P said, Yes, that's the way things should be. But who would we be? Stymie and Alfalfa, maybe. Or maybe it doesn't really matter because we wouldn't be the R Gang, only almost just like the R Gang, the smoking R Gang. That's our gang, said Dee Dee. What? Asked P. Our gang, not the R Gang. Well then, we will be called the R Gang, insisted P, so as to spare any confusion with the black and white Our Gang. Gee, sorry, said Dee Dee, looking all blank. Well, declared P in mock offense, you are forgiven, I guess. Oh my God, he blurted out suddenly in a cracked falsetto. Look over there. He was pointing in the direction of the First Baptist Church, where dark rain clouds were just beginning to form in the distance, over the dome, caressing the lower portion of the steeple. Our coffee-induced R-Gang fantasy was temporarily put on hold due to the sudden weather development. P rushed into his apartment room to put on some music that he thought conducive to a nice rain shower. He chose an old Miles Davis record, the title of which I am totally ignorant, my only concern being the slow, tense sounds of his blue horn. Listen, declared P. Miles Davis. Now if only Billy would show up. He's long overdue. I did not respond, but just stared at the dome of the Baptist church. My primary concern was rain, whether Billy was here to partake in the splendor of it or not. My head was spinning from coffee, and I was starting to break a sweat just sitting there on the porch. The clouds were slowly approaching. I silently prayed for water. No sooner had I thought the words, "Dear Lord," when a heavy warm breeze came blowing through the trees onto the porch and down the road, sending pieces of paper and leaves chasing after each other down the sidewalk, creating little dust tornadoes spinning here and spinning there. P came walking out the screen door, pretending to blow smooth, elongated notes on an imaginary trumpet. He then noticed the breeze. My God, where did this wind come from? Maybe Miles conjured it up with his horn. Could be, I replied. He returned to blowing his imaginary horn, and I cast my eyes once again to the oncoming clouds. They came elegantly crawling toward town like a black panther in his jungle, silently stalking his prey. Just as silent and almost as surprising, Billy suddenly appeared on the porch. "Billy!" exclaimed P. I turned to see him. He stood tall and thin. His arms were crossed over his chest as though he was clutching a teddy bear, or as though he was trying to protect his frail chest from something outside of himself. "Hello," I said. Silence from the seat that cradled Dee Dee, who was waiting to be introduced. "Hi," said Billy. "I'm not back in town 5 minutes and my picnic is already threatened by rain." Ho-hum. "Well, how are you?" asked P. "Oh, all right, I guess." "Are you enjoying yourself out there?" I asked. "Well, yeah. The whole thing is quite surreal. But really, it's not quite what my creative energies are craving. I think I might save my money and go out of the country somewhere. Maybe South America or Tangier. I see things haven't changed much around here." Just what do you expect to find in Tangier, Billy?" I asked. "Atlantis?" "I'm not sure, but something that I can't find here. Of course, you probably wouldn't understand." "Oh, I'm sure I wouldn't." We all stood there in silence for a minute. P kicked at a crack in one of the floorboards. I stared at the clouds that were coming closer and closer. Billy stood there with his arms crossed, and Dee Dee remained unchanged. The developing tension was broken by Rusty Ray, who came strutting back on the porch. He stopped next to Billy. "You must be Willie," said Rusty Ray. "That's Billy." "If you insist." Rusty Ray cocked his eyebrow and shuffled toward the steps. "Ah, beautiful," he exclaimed. "Miles Davis, just beautiful." "Where did you go?" asked P. "Well, you see," explained Rusty Ray, "I went upstairs to make some toast. Sometimes you just gotta have toast, or at least I do. Anyway, I put my bread in the toaster and decided I wanted to get clean, so I stepped into the shower. All was going beautifully until I remembered that my toaster didn't pop up automatically. So all of a sudden I hopped out of the shower and ran into the kitchen, only it was too late. My toast was burnt black like a piece of carbon paper. Or is carbon paper blue? Anyway, this would have been okay because I could have just toasted another piece of bread, only I was all out. So I had a banana instead. It was pretty good, but I really had my heart set on that piece of toast." P and I let go 2 shrieking bursts of laughter at Rusty Ray's story. Dee Dee kind of chuckled in her chair, and Billy made a feeble attempt at cracking a smile. Rusty Ray held out the palm of his hand and said, "It's starting to sprinkle." I looked at the sidewalk. Little splotches of water appeared as if, without sound, they came from nowhere. But the drops soon fell with a pitter and a patter, creating a directionless beat that nicely accompanied the sounds of the quintet emanating from inside. Rusty Ray stood there, fully clothed, soaking up the drops. In seconds, we had a full-blown shower. It poured down like a billion happy birthday streamers, only wet and cool. P, Rusty Ray, and I all screamed in unison, "Rain! Thanks, sweet Jesus, for rain." Billy did not seem so enthusiastic about the sudden weather development. I could have cared less. Dee Dee got a little color in her cheeks, so I figured she was privately enjoying the whole thing. Pete went inside to get some coffee. He came out with 2 cups and told Rusty Ray to warm up with some. "Thanks, man," said Rusty Ray. "Hey, does anyone have a cigarette? Wait, never mind. I stashed one behind the lamp here, you know, for emergency purposes." The 3 of us stood there sharing the coffee and passing Rusty Ray's cigarette. "Care for a swig of coffee?" I asked Billy, who stood in the same place and in the same position that he arrived in, only for whatever reason growing progressively more pouty while staring at the rain. "Oh, no thanks." "Suit yourself." There was a gutter drain just above the steps that was gushing water by the gallons. I took my shirt and shoes off and stood under it. Then I stepped onto the sidewalk. I was followed by P and Rusty Ray. Rusty Ray wore Shazam boxer shorts that stuck just below his navel. His pants, which had grown heavy from the rain, barely clung to his butt. "Come on, guys," commanded Rusty Ray, assuming the role of our fearless leader. "Join us," said P to Billy. I think I'll stay where it's safe and warm, thanks." "Suit yourself," I said. P and I hopped along the sidewalk behind Rusty Ray. I felt like I was 8 years old, and my buddies and I were running our merry way, far from the stuffy adults we left behind on our beloved porch. In the distance, church bells could be heard. P and I both chimed into the hymn, sounding like a cracked, drunken choir. "Christ our Lord is risen today, Alleluia, our triumphant holy day, Alleluia, ra 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 ba 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 ba," etc. and so on, until we were no longer singing but chanting. Cars drove by, and occasionally a passenger or 2 would give us a look suggesting, "Boys your age have no place playing in the rain." After many minutes, the rain let up, turning into a heavy drizzle. Rusty Ray suggested that we take a break. We sat down on a curb, sticking our wet heads between our knobby knees, and occasionally spat into the water stream flowing at the bottom of the curb and into the sewer. Rusty Ray cleared his throat and set one sailing. "Wow, did you see that hawker?" asked Rusty Ray. "Beautiful," I said. "Green." P sat silently staring at the stream, making no mention of the hawker. After a few moments of reflection, he turned to me and said, "Billy sure seems distant." "I guess it suits him," I replied. Maybe so." He returned to his reflection, and Rusty Ray continued to send what seemed to be an endless supply of hawkers floating down the miniature river. He soon grew bored with this activity and said, "All right, guys, that's enough rest. Let's head back." We walked back to the porch in silence, enjoying the remaining bits of drizzle. When we returned to the porch, Dee Dee was no longer sitting in the chair, but standing up by the steps, smoking a cigarette. Billy was no longer there. "Where's Billy?" inquired P. "He left," answered Dee Dee. "But why?" "He said he's gone to Atlantis. You need not write or call." "Oh, how awful!" "What the fuck does he expect?" I said. "A parade?" "That's okay, guys," said Rusty Ray. "He can go to Atlantis if he wants, but he can never be in our club. Rule number 1 is, no girls allowed. Ah ha ha ha." P and I looked at each other and smiled, and I thought to myself, it is true, we really are the smoking our gang.
Wait, you're the original owner?
Well, my grandparents built it in 1916.
Whoa, that long ago?
And it it was built for a boarding house. It had rooms back in those days. No running water. My grandfather would fill up pitchers and take their pitcher to them in in their bedrooms, and it has just broken my heart to see it run down like this.
Oh yeah, I was living in it when it was run down. Mary Hall
See, I
owned
sold
it.
it to Mary Hall.
Oh really?
Yeah,
I heard it.
kept it up nice until I sold to Mary, and then it started going down and down. Until it's
Well, do you have any old pictures of it? Like when it was
beautiful one.
Oh.
It had awnings, on the porches over there, and oh, it was a beautiful place. One of the prettiest places. I gotta get out of the wind.
Okay.
Anyway, I saw all this and I thought, I knew they were gonna tear it down.
Yeah.